Now, in what can be termed a shocking revelation, the group managing director, well, it's not shocking to me though, but it has been documented as a shocking revelation. The group managing director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Mele Kyari, has disclosed that everyone is involved in oil theft. Now, he made this statement during the oversight function conducted by the House of Representatives Special Committee on oil theft at the NNPCL headquarters in Abuja on Wednesday. Now, Kyari revealed that the company documented 9,000 infractions on its pipelines within a single year. 9,000 infractions. According to the GMD NNPCL, from 2022 to the present, the company has shut down 6,465 illegal refineries. And Kyari also noted further that out of the 5,570 illegal connections discovered, 4,876 have been removed from the pipelines. Now, the NNPCL boss actually explained that he wasn't certain as to whether this was the actual number of illegal connections or there were more, which investigations are yet to uncover. I find it hilarious that he doesn't even have the actual figure. Well, in his words, crude oil theft is almost an end-to-end issue in Nigeria. It is very obvious that everyone is involved. By everyone, I would, we have joining us virtually. We have Nick Agule, who is an expert in this area, having worked in this area for quite some time. Talking about an area of oil and gas. Nick is also, good morning to you, Nick, for joining us. Everyone is involved. That's what we are hearing. But how does that even assuage Nigerians? How does that make us feel better? And as you respond with your opening remarks, how do we get these connections to the pipeline without NNPC knowing that somebody is tapping from its virtue, in quotes now?
Moses and the team in the studios. And good morning to our viewers globally. Before I answer your question as to how these thousands of connections, as alleged by the NNPCL Group Managing Director, is done without their knowing, let me say some few things up front. First of all, when President Tinubu took over in May last year, which is now trying to clock a year, he made a lot of changes. He made changes in the central bank and other key areas of Nigeria's economy. But he didn't make any change at the NNPC. So here is a man who is giving a report card of his own performance in office. We have handed him Nigeria's bread basket, which is the oil and gas industry, to run as a business. And he comes back to give us a report card. He is not an independent body that is reporting him. He's the one reporting himself and saying, this bread basket that you gave me to run as a business, I have allowed it to be stolen by thieves for so long. And yet, President Tinubu has left him in office to continue with this performance scorecard that he's giving us for reasons best known to the president. We have said this over and over again, that you cannot continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. So if we had crude theft in the past and it was not being checked, and the people who are in charge have been left in their positions, then of course we don't expect anything to change. So that is the background to the story. The first thing I will say is that you are very correct. When I graduated in 1989, but because we formed a Babangida regime to a standstill during the SAP riots, I did my national service in 1990 to 1991. From 91 to 95, I was an academician. I was back at the university teaching. From 95 till I retired in 2018 fully from working. And then since then, I'm a consultant. I have only worked in the oil industry. I worked all my life in the oil industry. And I worked in the oil industry in the upstream where oil is produced and the downstream where oil is transported and refined and distributed and sold at petrol stations. So um, I know one or two things about this industry. So to answer your question directly, there is absolutely no way that an oil pipe, be it a flow line or a pipeline, is tapped and those producing the oil will not know. It's absolutely no way. And I can tell Nigerians why it is impossible.
Go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, two things. Two things. Number one, how is oil produced? Oil is produced just like we sink a borehole for water. Anybody who has sunk a borehole for water or has seen a borehole for water sank, that is the same way oil is produced. The only difference is that drilling for water, it goes to very shallow depth and you see water. But drilling for oil, you need to go like kilometers down the earth to see the oil. And when you see the oil comes out through the pipe. You sink pipes into the reservoir where the oil is sitting, and the oil comes through the pipe. So there's pressure. There are some oil wells that are highly pressurized, so the oil will be jumping out by itself. And there are oil wells that are not highly pressurized, so you use gas to go and disturb the oil to come out. That's what you call gas lift. So immediately the oil comes out to the surface, there is something on top of that oil well. We call it the Christmas tree. So the oil comes out through that Christmas tree, and then you connect what we call a flow line to that Christmas tree. Then the oil now flows through that flow line to what we call a flow station or a gathering station. Now, right at that Christmas tree, there is a meter where you meter the oil. That is why you are able to know how much a specific particular well is producing. So usually, unlike borehole where you just sink one borehole, in oil production, you sink so many wells. So if you go to an oil block, you must see up to about 100 different oil wells, scooping oil from different angles of the reservoir. So all that 100 or so wells are bringing their oil through flow lines to a gathering station called a flow station. Each well is metered, so you now know that well A is producing 2,000 barrels per day, well B is producing 2,500 barrels per day. That is the first thing. By the time they go to the flow station, everything is metered at the flow station, where you know that this is how much this well is bringing to this flow station, so that together you will know that this flow station is receiving 20,000 barrels of crude oil per day. And then from that flow station, you connect a pipeline. That means after you have gathered the oil from the different wells, you now connect a pipeline from that flow station to take the oil to a terminal. You meter that oil as it's leaving that flow station, and that is why you are able to know that this particular flow station is producing X amount of barrels per day. When that oil goes to the terminal, as it arrives the terminal, you meter it at the terminal when it's arrived. So if 50,000 barrels left and only 45,000 barrels has arrived the terminal, you know that 5,000 barrels is lost on the way. How is it lost? Either the pipeline is leaking, or somebody is stealing the crude oil. That you know that instantly. Then When you now bring the oil to the terminal, terminals are like Boni terminal, Focados terminal, Kwaibo terminal, where the oil is now gathered in big, big tanks. At the terminal, you will see this kind of huge tanks. The oil is usually coming with water. The oil is usually coming with water.
Okay.
So you will drop the entire oil and water in those big tanks and leave it there for a couple of days. When you leave it there, the water settles to the bottom while the oil settles at the top. The oil is lighter than water. And then you now scoop the oil. You scoop the oil that has come, that is gathered on top in those big tanks, and you put it through what you call an export pipeline. So that pipeline goes into the Atlantic Ocean, where a big oil tanker will come and carry the oil. So the gathered oil is now again metered out of the terminal. And when it arrives the export terminal in the Atlantic Ocean, it is metered there again on its arrival. And then the export terminal has a meter to say this is the oil I'm sending to the export tanker. That is the ship. And then when it gets on top of the ship itself has a meter to say this is the amount of oil I am receiving from Focados terminal. You understand? So this whole thing is metered from the point of production, which is the Christmas tree on top of the oil well, to the export terminal that has come to carry the oil. And
So
if one
basically,
barrel is missing,
So
we
basically,
know.
for the NNPCL GMD to say that 5,570 illegal connections, they've been able to discover 4,876. That's absurd. That's completely, you know, impossible to have the connections in the first place.
Very impossible because let me tell you the other reason why it's very easy to know. When you pump oil out of a flow station, like I said, the flow station is a gathering station at the oil block where the different wells produce into it and is gathered. The people at the flow station are monitoring the pressure on the pipeline. Then the people at the terminal where the oil is going to arrive are also monitoring the pressure. And let me tell you one thing with the pipeline. Let me tell you one thing with the pipeline. Like in the Western Delta, you have the Transfocados pipeline. That pipeline is not only one producer that is putting oil inside, though. All the oil companies in the Western Delta, as they are producing, they are injecting it in that same pipeline. They are injecting it in the same pipeline. So once the pipeline is passing by your oil block, you connect your oil to the pipeline. So by the time the oil arrives in Focados terminal, it is bringing oil of more than 20 oil producers. How will they know whose oil, how much oil each person has in that this thing? It's by metering now. It's by metering. So if you are a producer like Shell, at the point they are injecting a particular oil block into the pipeline, there's a meter on that pipeline that meters to say this quantity of oil is coming from Shell. This quantity of oil is coming from Chevron. This quantity of oil is coming. All the producers inject in that single pipeline and it's all metered. Everything is metered. So if there is loss of quantity, it is instantly known. If the yes,
I was going to come to you on those particular sentences you just made now. Now, the question is very simple. The NNPCL boss coming to give this revelation about the fact that they've uncovered some of these oil wells that were dug by some individuals. Is this, and of course, you just rightly mentioned, let's even establish this fact. There is no way that any pipeline will even be tapped in any way without the NNPCL knowing. That's an established fact. Now, knowing all of this fact, and the present NNPCL boss is still the NNPCL boss, Does that in any way say that the government is also aware that some individuals are doing these things and they are permitting them? Is that the possibility of that at all?
There's a lot of possibilities in what we're saying. First of all, let me also say that there is technology
Okay.
that exists. There's technology. So let's say a pipeline. We're talking about the Transfogados pipeline, for instance. The pipeline is in the Western Delta. On the Eastern Delta, you have the Bonny terminal. It also has a big pipeline going there. There is technology called SCADA. If you install this technology, not only will you know that the pipeline is being tapped, you will know the specific point on that pipeline that is being tapped. The question is, does the NNPCL have this technology on the pipelines in Nigeria? If answer is yes, then of course, the NNPC and group managing director is not doing his job. If the answer is no, the question is, why has he not installed the pipeline? I mean, sorry, the technology like SCADA on his pipelines? Because if he hasn't done that, again, he's not doing his job. Because the oil industry is a risky business, and that is why risk management for us is a very important thing. If you identify a risk, which is risk that my oil will be stolen, as somebody who is in charge, you should then have a mitigation to that risk. And in this case, mitigation will be number one, the technology, which tells you the specific point on that pipeline that is being tapped. Mitigation number two will be a response system. A response system. And I can tell you about this technology is that if a pipeline, for instance, is buried in the ground and somebody comes on the surface of the pipeline and is digging, once he begins to dig, that technology already will alert the control room that there is disturbance at that point. He hasn't even touched the pipeline. So why has the technology not been implemented? It's a big question for the NNPC Group Managing Director to answer. Then the security, the response system. You see, this is also part of the problem. President Tinubu, once he assumed office, he needed to understand what are the big ticket items that are bothering Nigeria. But you see, the government seems to be focused on small things. We run after buyers, we run after traders with their goods in their shop. We say EFCC against them. We run after goods trying to leave the port. We run after traders who are selling foreign exchange. This is what Nigerian government, federal government is spending time to be doing, running after small things when there are big ticket items waiting for attention. And one of them is the security of not just our oil installations, but of Nigeria entirely. You are running after traders selling foreign exchange. Why they will come and carry our children in their hundreds, and you will not run after those who have carried them for days and weeks. So the government, to focus back on our conversation, the government is failing to secure our oil installations. I can tell you that in the UK, where I'm speaking to you from now, if anybody knows that I can go in the UK, the oil is produced in the north. It's the direct opposite of Nigeria. When oil is produced in the south, in Nigeria, in the UK, oil is produced in the north, where you call the North Sea. That's where they produce their oil. If people in this UK know that they can go to the North Sea now and tap crude oil pipelines and start taking crude oil, and not just taking the crude oil, they are able to refine the crude oil in some illegal refinery, or even sell it to some merchants who have brought their ships to the North Atlantic, and they sell it to them and nothing will happen to them. I can bet you that people will go and tap those pipelines. I bet you, I put my pension on the table that UK people will go and tap those pipelines. The only reason that they are not tapping pipelines in the UK is because if you tap it, you will not go free. In fact, before you even tap it, they have heard you. That is the solution that is needed in Nigeria. And why is the president not dealing with this now? It's getting to a year in office. If the president calls the chief of naval staff into his office, the man who is responsible for policing our territorial waters, calls the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense commandant
All right then.
into
Nick,
the same office
because of
and
time.
read the riot act to them and say, look, if you allow 1 barrel of Nigeria's crude oil to be stolen, you guys are going to lose your jobs. Do you think they'll be stealing our crude oil again?
Okay.
Every budget cycle will give the chunk of the budget to security, and security are not delivering on their functions.
Okay, now
What is that supposed to mean?
let's look at the impact of this statement made by the NNPCL GMD. Nigeria's oil production, crude oil production, has dropped, according to OPEC, by 7%, bringing it to about 1.32 meters per barrel last month. How does this affect the 2024 appropriation bill that's talking about the budget now, seeing that our budget usually is hinged on the production of oil? Yeah. What are the dangers in this?
Nigeria's 2024 budget is in crisis. I just hope Nigerians understand that. It's in a big crisis. Nigeria is facing a fiscal crisis.
Already?
And that is because we budgeted that we'll be selling 1.7 million barrels of crude oil per day. That was the budget. We'll be producing 1.7 million barrels. We've not produced beyond 1.3. In fact, OPEC just issued their report yesterday to say that Nigeria produced only 1.32 million barrels per day on average for the past month. So there is 400,000 barrels of crude oil that we said we are going to be making money from that we are not producing. So first and foremost, Nigerians need to be aware that the federal government budget itself was 28 trillion, of which government said that they were going to make 18 trillion revenue and they will borrow 10 trillion. Now, that 18 trillion they said they will make, about 25% of it is not being made as we speak today. It's not being made. So what then that means is that this budget is almost dead on arrival. Only two things can happen. It's either the government will not fully implement the budget, or the government is going to borrow more. And already we're talking about a government that is using 100% of its revenue to service debt. You know, we have problems in Nigeria, and the problems is that, like, the Senate of the Federal Republic is meant to have oversight function over the executive arm of government, and in fact all the other arms of government. And I watched a senator of the Federal Republic, Jimo Ibrahim from Ondo State, Ondo South. He was on TV a few days ago and he was saying, Nigeria does not have a debt problem because our debt to GDP ratio is just 23%, and debt to GDP ratio of the states like the US, UK is more than 100%. And I said, where is this man coming from? Did he ever open the budget which he was said to have approved and look into it at all? When you're talking about debt, you're not only talking about the quantum of debt, you're talking about your ability to repay the debt. If you go to a bank to borrow money, the bank is not only going to look at the amount of debt that you want to borrow, it's going to look at whether you have enough income to repay that debt.
Okay, Mr.
And Nigeria is using 100% of its income to service debt, and you have a senator of the Federal Republic supporting the fact that, so these are all of the crisis points we have in Nigeria. Even those who should be helping us are the ones who don't even understand their left from their right.
Okay, Mr. Nick, talking about the oversight function, it was there where they were having this on as regards the oil theft that the chairman of this committee, I'm talking about the committee on the oil theft, talked about so many things. He made mention of so many things to be what is contributing to this oil theft. To talk about how Nigeria, from the oil wellhead, flow station, loading and export terminals actually are not being transparent. He also made mention of, the when I mean underclearing of lifting, and also hasty granting of approval to be the reasons. Now, because we're talking about something, I was made mention of having meters to measure all the crude oil being produced. And my colleague asked a question saying, is it that the officials of NNPCL are sabotaging our effort with themselves, or is it that maybe they don't really know that all these things are happening? That is the one of first question. Then the second one again is, when he was thinking of profiling a solution to how we're going to curb the issue of the oil theft, he made mention of all agencies coming under one umbrella, including, I'm talking about security agencies now, including a private security firm to be what to champion, the issue of curbing oil theft. Do you think having a different security agencies for oil theft in the country will actually make a leadway in preventing the issue of oil theft?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So, yes, to your first question, whether the officials who are in charge of producing our crude oil, like in the NNPCL, are involved in crude theft? My answer will be very yes. It will be yes. They are involved. If they were not involved, they will stop this thing. So those, you see, Nigeria, I always pity Nigeria. When I look at Nigeria sometimes, I just have pity on the country. You know why? Because there's so much that is happening to the country. The country is being emasculated, is being sucked. The country is being, from all sides, So, first and foremost, what we've been talking about crude oil theft. That is one thing. The crude is being stolen at the point of theft. But then when the crude actually gets to the terminal, the chairman of the House Committee is very correct. There are all sorts of shenanigans that are happening at the export operations. You have lack of transparency, with liftings. Like he talked about undeclared liftings. It's possible. These things are happening. You talk about the metering process. All these things are happening. So even officially, we are not seeing transparency, in addition to the stealing that is going on along the entire production value chain of crude oil in Nigeria. And for me, these are the kind of things the president needs to address frontally. Can the president dedicate one day in his office and face these things and say, look, this thing must stop. If it doesn't stop, heads must roll. And of course, the suggestion by the group managing director of the NNPCL that all the security should be brought under one umbrella, I don't have a problem with that. If Nigeria wants to establish an oil industry protection security outfit, let them go ahead and do it, because that is our bread. That is our source of bread. And if our source of bread is being tampered with, that should attract the attention of Mr. President, who is the commander-in-chief.
All right.
He has to deal with this thing frontally.
All right. Unfortunately,
and I agree with the NNPCL managing director that you don't hand over our maritime security to private actors. The private actors, if at all, should act under the purview, supervision, and control of our established security architecture, which in this case is the Nigerian Navy.
Thank you very much, Nick. Unfortunately, we're pressed for time, so we can't elongate this conversation, but we must thank you for your thoughts and the expose there. You've taken us through a crash course on how oil production takes place, and we honestly appreciate you. Well, thank you very, very much for joining the program today.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
All right, then. Now, up next on VOP this morning, President Bola Tinubu orders the reopening of land and air borders with Niger, including lifting of all previous sanctions. Let's talk about this one when we come back.
When you're more